What if the rapture doesn't happen in the next couple of years? What if our rapture window theories go belly up? What would this mean? Should this shake us in our belief in the pre-tribulation rapture? Hi there, I'm Lee Brainerd. Welcome to Soothkeep and another edition of Prophecy in the Crucible. My mission is truth. Truth that God will own as truth at the judgment seat of Christ. Truth in our doctrine, our practice, and our discernment. Now, we're talking today about the question of the rapture window. What if the summer of 2026 rolls around and we are still here? What if all of our rapture window theories go belly up? For instance, what about the highly popular 6,000 year theory? What if it appears to fail? You know, the theory starts with the Sabbath pattern that we see in the creation account, and then it adds a testimony of 2 Peter 3:8, where we read that one day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as one day. Then it adds a testimony of Hosea chapter 5, verse 14 to Hosea 6:2, where we read that there's 2,000 years, or 2 days, from Israel's rejection to Israel's restoration. And there's a testimony that Israel will then dwell one day or 1,000 years before the Lord. And usually people take this passage and they measure 2,000 years from the cross to the kingdom, because at the cross is where the temple had its veil rent and Israel was set aside. So then from the cross you back measure the other 4,000 years or 4 days back to the garden. Now with this framework, we take the 2,000 years that we add to the cross, and if we take the last year that's typically regarded as a potential year for the cross, which is 33 AD, you add 2,000 years to that, takes you out to 2033. Then you subtract the 7 years for the tribulation, which takes you to the spring of 2026. And then from there, we would understand that there's a window of time between the beginning of the 70th week and the rapture, and so the rapture had happened sometime in 2024, 2025, or in the spring of 2026. And this looks like pretty solid math. I grant that point. But what if this theory appears to fail? What if we find ourselves in the summer of 2026 or 2027? Now, for another instance of a rapture window theory that could appear to fail is the Shimita Rapture theory. What if the current and future permutations of the Shimita Rapture theory fail? Now, the theory is based on the 7-year agricultural cycles that we see in Exodus 23, Leviticus 25, and numerous other passages. The Jews were supposed to work their fields for 6 years and let the fields rest for the 7th year. This cycle would run 7 times for a total of 49 years, and then a Jubilee year would come, which makes a total of 50 years for the Jubilee cycle. Now, the Shimita Rapture theory says that the final Shimita cycle is going to be the tribulation, the 7 years of the tribulation, and so the rapture has to happen prior to the last Shimita cycle. Well, we've already blown through a number of Shimita Rapture theories that had the new Shimita cycle starting in the fall. For instance, the theory that had a Shimita cycle start in 2021, one that was 2022, one that was 2023, various forms of 2024. They all failed, and we're still here. So what if we blow through the new theory, which says that the new Shimita cycle starts in the fall of 2025? And this, by the way, is the last option that we have that fits the 2024 to 2026 rapture window. So what if we find ourselves blowing right through this Shimita cycle and we find ourselves in the summer of 2026 or 2027? What if we find ourselves in a period of time that the Shimita Rapture cycle says is the tribulation? impossible, many are going to say. The math is good. The calculations are good. And convergence is going off the rails. But why is it impossible? Every rapture theory for the past 4 decades has gone belly up. Why are we so confident that these rapture window theories won't also go belly up? Let's put things in perspective. The brightest minds for the past 4 decades have been humbled over and over again. The numbers always look good until they fail. The theories always make our heart race until they fail. So how do we respond to this? Here's the solution. Put your big eye on prophetic convergence and the precious rapture promises. Put your little eye on your theories for dating and timing the rapture. Give 10 times more weight to the general understanding of the imminent rapture and prophetic convergence than you give to any supposed deep insight that appears to date or time the rapture. The truth is, folks, deep insights have a very, very low batting average. The batting average is 0. Now, I do myself hold the 6,000-year theory. I hold it in a general way. I believe it's the truth of the living God, and I believe it will be ultimately vindicated precisely. But having said that, folks, I'm not going to be shocked or stumbled if we find ourselves blowing right through our rapture window theories and we find ourselves in the summer of 2026 or 2027. How, you might ask? How in the world could that be? Well, because our theories could be off. So how could the rapture window theories be off? Well, there's several ways that our application of the 6,000-year theory could be off. First of all, we may have overlooked something that belongs in the equation, some little qualification that would add a few years. The second way is that maybe our calendar is off a few years. Maybe God's calendar says that it's 2022 and we think it's 2025. There's no way for us to know for sure that our calendar is exactly correct. The third way is that maybe the years should be marked from a different point than from the cross. For instance, maybe we should be marking from the time when the first Gentiles were added to the Jewish remnant, which was about 7 years after Pentecost. Maybe we're not supposed to be marking from Pentecost. Maybe we're not supposed to be marking from the cross. Recall that the one new man is formed when the Gentiles were added to the Jews. Prior to that, there was just a Jewish remnant. It wasn't the one new man. Now, this 7 years mirrors the 7 years of the 70th week that the Jews suspected they were in. They didn't know that they were in the church age window until the kingdom didn't come, until the Gentiles were added, until the revelation of the mystery was given to Paul and the other apostles, and the apostles had gained an understanding of the Old Testament passages in which God temporarily forsook Israel. It took a while for all this to sink in and for it all to make sense. They finally got it all together in Acts chapter 15, where they realized that God was doing a special work amongst the Gentiles to gather a Gentile people unto himself, and then he's going to return to Israel. Now, I'm not saying that any of these points are necessarily true. I'm just giving you a heads up to possibilities ahead of time in case we blow right through our rapture window theories and find ourselves in 2026, 2027, way beyond where we thought we would be. Now, there's also several ways in which the Shimita cycle rapture theory could be off. The first one is that we could be measuring from the wrong date. The fact is, nobody knows for sure what year the cycle actually started. We simply don't. It's an educated guess at best. And nobody knows for sure whether any of the efforts to restart the Shimita cycle are in harmony with the original Shimita cycle. The second point is that we could be counting the Shimita cycles and the Jubilee cycles wrong. Many of the theories that I have examined were counting 49-year Jubilee cycles rather than 50-year Jubilee cycles, and I think this is a mistake. The Jubilee was a 50th year that was attached to the 49 years of 7 Shimita cycles. The third point that needs to be considered is that our efforts to resuscitate the Shimita cycle might not be in harmony with God's original intent and God's prophetic plan. Maybe God never intended for the Shimita cycles to be a tool for prophetic speculation. Maybe they are only agricultural. Maybe the original Shimita cycle was a standalone institution that wasn't an expansion of an existing 7-year cycle that started in the garden. And maybe God can restart the Shimita cycle anew in the millennium with zero regard for the past broken cycle and zero regard for any of man's efforts to resuscitate the cycle. Now, some are going to be inclined to defend the rapture dating theories by appealing to convergence. They want to defend the Rapture-Window theories by appealing to convergence. And they'll say things like, but brother, convergence is red hot. We have to go up this year. We can't be here another year. Well, I agree that we are very deep in prophetic convergence. You'd have to have your eyes poked out to not see that. The prophetic convergence is increasing in intensity and in frequency and diversity on many fronts: the geopolitical front, the technological front, the ideological front, the religious front. The spirit of the Antichrist and the spirit of the mystery of iniquity are raising their ugly heads in this world, and the terrifying developments are on the horizon. But I would caution that men have been saying that convergence is red hot for quite a long time. Good men, some of the greatest minds in the history of the church, thought that the rapture was less than a decade away in the 80s and 90s, and we are still here. This illustrates that we don't know as much about prophetic convergence as we think we do. We don't know exactly what the fully set stage for the tribulation is going to look like. We don't know how much of the stage setting that we're going to see in the church age. We just don't know. We don't know how long the window is between the rapture and the beginning of the tribulation. So there could be days, weeks, months, or even a year or two where the stage setting for the tribulation keeps building up after the rapture of the church. We simply have no idea. And my suspicion, folks, is that we could see way more convergence than we would like to see before the rapture trumpet sounds. So what kind of convergence could we see? Well, we could see Big Brother government rolling out in aces and spades. We could see a full rollout of the digital currency and social credit scoring. We could see a full rollout of the digital ID and digital passports. We could see Big Brother government using AI and supercomputers and quantum computers to keep tabs on us and control us. We could see terrifying advances in biotechnology and transhumanism. We could see people being modified with animal DNA and plant DNA and angelic DNA and modified human DNA and implanted chips and symbiosis with computers. It's a terrifying thought. We could see the conservatives and the centrists continue to drift left, getting to unspeakable places. We could see the demise of America, which most prophecy teachers expect. We could also see, on the other hand, the rise of America as part of the Roman Empire of the last days, if not the little horn juggernaut itself, which is a minority position, and I'm inclined to that position. We could be here long enough to see the insane military buildup of Russia and Turkey and Iran and all of their allies in Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. We might only go up in the rapture just days or weeks at most before that battle of Gog and Magog starts. This, in fact, is my number one point for prophetic convergence. It is, in my estimation, the first thing that happens after the rapture. So it's the closest signal that we have to a rapture signal. But the fact that we can be so close to Gog and Magog before we go up in the rapture presents a difficulty for the current rapture window theories, that many of which say we must go up this year. Because judging by the current circumstances, Gog and Magog could easily be 2 or 3 years away. Right now, it looks like Russia and Iran are in full retreat from Syria and partial retreat from Jordan and Lebanon. It looks like Gog and Magog, led by Russia, has been delayed, though it really hasn't. And I expect to see some kind of turnaround in the next year or two. I expect to see Russia, Turkey, and Iran reach some far-reaching, pragmatic agreement for close cooperation on several fronts. The first one is Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan. The second is Israel and the Jews. The third is America, NATO, and the EU. And the fourth is the dominance of the American petrodollar. I expect Trump and MAGA America to terrify them into this close cooperation. Now, some are going to challenge these thoughts on the amount and kind of convergence that we can see with the claim that the rapture happens during a time of relative normality. In their estimation, the church seeing this kind of and degree of convergence is contrary to relative normality. But I think that this objection is unfounded. It's absolutely true that the rapture is going to happen during a time of relative normality, but relative normality is the wheels of the world going normally or turning normally in such things as buying and selling, marrying and giving in marriage, eating and drinking, and planting and harvesting. So these matters of prophetic convergence are not affected by relative normality. And relative normality gives us no commentary on what kind of prophetic convergence we can or can't see. At least prophetic convergence that's prior to the tribulation. The fact is, nothing in the Bible forbids the church from seeing the kind of prophetic convergence that we just talked about. None of the things that we talked about for prophetic convergence stop buying and selling. None of them stop planting and harvesting. None of them stop marrying and giving in marriage, and none of them stop eating and drinking. The truth is, the world which loves darkness will experience relative normality while they continually wade deeper and deeper into the convergence matters, into the New World Order, the rise of the New World Order. And though such convergence is seen by us believers is very abnormal, yet it is normal, it's the new normal for the ungodly world at large. I want you to think about this. What we're seeing right now with the rise of all this prophetic convergence in fields like technology and biotechnology and transhumanism and ideology and religion, all this stuff is just the same exponential curve that the world at large has been on since the rise of rationalism in the 1600s, since the rise of evolution in the 1800s, since the rise of the Industrial Revolution in the 1700s. This is the same exponential curve. Nothing is different in quality. It only differs in quantity. So there's no contradiction, folks, between relative normality and the stage completely set for the tribulation. In other words, there's no contradiction between relative normality and the church going up just weeks before the tribulation starts. Zero contradiction. The world doesn't lose its relative normality until the rapture of the church. And that will be immediately followed by ever-increasing judgments from the hand of God. So in conclusion, folks, if we blow right through the rapture window and we find ourselves in 2026 or 2027, no alarm bells are going to go off for me. I'm not going to be crushed. I'm not going to face any doubts. And I'm not going to go into a funk. My first thought will be that we overlook something that belongs in the equation, or maybe our calendar was just off a year or two or three, maybe four. It's no big deal. We just throw another really cool rapture dating theory in the junk pile. We hold a 10-minute funeral, we play taps, and we move on. Everything that's truly significant, everything that's truly substantial, everything that's truly indisputable bedrock truth will be unchanged. Prophetic convergence in the scriptures, prophetic convergence that's in the headlines, it will still be red hot and getting hotter. The rapture promises of deliverance before the wrath, that is, deliverance before the day of the Lord, before judgment, before the hour of trial, they're all still valid. The scriptures cannot be broken. So take heart. Don't put a lot of hope in dating and timing theories. This is kind of like trusting a guy who's been lying to you over and over and over again. You keep giving him another chance. Your hope is in the Lord himself and in the rapture itself. Even if our gathering in the clouds happens a few years later than we anticipated, a few years later than we wanted, he is worth the wait. The rapture is worth the wait. Eternal life and eternal inheritance is worth the wait. Eyes wide open, brain engaged, heart on fire. We'll see you next time.